Hello, my name is Ep23, and today I'm going to talk about the book of Ecclesiastes. It took me a while to get that name down. I had to look it up and practice it. It's rough. But regardless, that's a book of the Bible. And actually, I was recommended that I actually go look at that. And I've come to only one conclusion. I like that. Whoever wrote it, I like them a lot. It's kind of snarky, no nonsense. There is no sugarcoating much of anything. There isn't a lot of long words, long sentences. It's just the way it is. You could almost think of it as, in my youth when I used to drink and smoke, I could have been drinking and smoking with this guy. Okay, he made that much sense to me. But I do recommend that everyone goes over and actually reads that book. Because it's actually it's a really short book. It's a real good book. It took me approximately about 20 minutes to read. I read it last night. And I'm glad I read it because it's less, how am I going to say this? There's not a lot of references to God. It's implied. And it's kind of along the lines of, you're screwed. If you're rich, you're going to die. If you're poor, you're going to die. So if you're rich or poor, you're going to die. You're favored by God, not favored by God, you're going to die. It's a very sobering message. It's the message of, I guess, futility of what you're doing. You think you're making a real for the kingdom. We're doing it it's whatever God's plan is. Because really, the snarkiness of the whole book literally basically says, do the best you can. Because if you're rich or poor, you're going to die. Famous, bum, you're going to die either way. You're dying no matter what happens. You can be rich, you can be poor. You can't take your money with you, so it's stuck here in this realm. Nothing's going to happen. You kind of get the idea that God is running the script. And not to be funny about it, but everyone talks about, how, we got free will. Do you really have free will? You have as much free will as God lets you have. And sometimes God will spank you quite a bit to get you back into, God's will, not yours. God will trash your life if you're not in the right place. But what's interesting about the book is it's very snarky, very up-to-date. It's very modern in my logic. And the Bible that I use is the Message. I also look at a couple others, usually to reference back and forth. But I generally read a lot more out of the Message because it is literally in common English that not a lot of dissection required to think about it. Not a lot of variety and message there. One thing I did learn while in the military is anyone could send and receive a message, but if you don't understand the message, it's not really a message. In the computer world, you could send all kinds of, quote, messages you want. I go, but unless the other side knows how to interpret those messages, there is no message. And that's what I find important about the Bibles, is that they may have all been translated from possibly the same source or different sources. Doesn't really matter. But when you look at two or three of them together, you get a bigger picture. One may be a little more terse than the other. One's a little more soft. One's a little more in your face. The other one is a little backed off. Either way, why not look at more than one? Because heaven forbid you actually get a slightly better impact on you, what was being said. That is what I do. So, I found that very enlightening, that book. It's not necessarily funny, but it reminds you of, in this, you hear talk about spiritual contracts. Where before your soul comes down here, you make deals. I envision it this way. This tells you how twisted I think it is. It's almost like God comes up to you as a soul and says, "Hey, I got this contract. I got this script. I want you to look at it." And it shows you basically the first 3 pages of the script. Doesn't tell you anything else. Just the background. Oh yeah, you're gonna be this, and you're gonna go through some hardships. Oh yeah. And you as a soul have to make a decision. Am I gonna do it? Am I not? Yeah, I'm gonna go do it. Okay. Then when quote the script gets done, all kinds of detail gets added into that. But you only know that much of your script. This is what the basic flow of my life is supposed to be like. And then literally, God wrote the movie, man. It can be anything. It could be easy, it could be difficult. Depends on your movie. So in this book kind of just basically kind of says that. It doesn't say that about a movie, but it says basically you're at God's will, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Because, I do what he says. And that's the ironically funny thing about life is when you analyze it, even in the text it says, hey, if you're God's favored, you could go through a lot of hard times and then be God's favored. Or you could be rich and then lose it at the end, going to God's favored. As I said, there's very weird things in there that almost like you're watching a movie script, and the guy kind of breaks it down to, hey, it's just futility what we're doing here. Why are we even bothering? We can't undo what God has made. So essentially it's kind of do the best you can with the part that you got, because you really have no control over any of it. It's a pure surrender issue. Nothing you can do about it. So I do strongly recommend. As I said, it's a really short read. I think it took me about 20 minutes. It was about 8, maybe 10, less than 10 verses. Not verses, but sections. I said I read it pretty quickly, and I said I kind of had to laugh because it kind of like me, and this dude could have been drinking somewhere. For at the time in which it was written, I could have been there drinking with him, for all I know, because I said it's funny because it kind of sounds like me, or it sounds like I knew this guy. But it's not like the rest of the books of the Bible where it's very heavy into God. It's just he basically just says, hey, you got no control over any of this. And it's pretty straightforward in it. Now, it's not to discourage anybody. I said, just you do your best. Because we have to remember that we're not rewarded down here on earth. We're actually rewarded in heaven, in the spiritual world. So that's what people have to kind of remember, is that's where the rewards are, not here. Here you just show what you can do, how to inspire, lead, and do whatever you need to do here. How you operate here dictates what happens up there, kinda. Because also the spirit realm, it's how's it go? As above, or if I recall correctly, it's as above, so below. Which means whatever happens in the spiritual, eventually, because the spiritual is the energy side of it, eventually happens in the physical here, on 3D. It's not usually exact. An example is if you can actually be in spiritual jail for breaking the universal laws. And they do have an impact here. And it could be you lose your job, it could be, you're just in la la land you can't think for yourself for a couple weeks, you're just distracted the whole time. All kinds of interesting things. But there is a very big parallel between as above and below. You can also, kind of funny is, I've also heard references to the spiritual side is where the script is written and there's waiting for a movie to play out here. And it's kind of like everything here is pre-recorded, which kind of makes me laugh because, especially with the movie references, realistically that's kind of right. We're at the mercy of what God's going to do. So notes. as I said, it's very interesting. But I thought you'd want to know that, and I think more people should actually read that book if you haven't already, because it's actually a very interesting book, and it takes you in a different direction than some of the other places in the Bible, which is not bad. It's different. Welcome to surrendering. You have to surrender and say, I have no control of any of this. Just like in life, we think we have free will. No, I don't think we have all that much free will as we think we do. I look at free will and I sit there and say, well, God, I'll let you have free will for a little while until you get a little bit too far out of the lane, and then he kicks you back. Or if you get too far out of line and too bratty, okay, really bad stuff starts happening to you and you can't figure out why. It's like, well, have you been listening to what Father says? If you haven't, well, you get what you get. So, that's just my thoughts. Thank you for listening.